During this year's annual town meeting season, Cape Cod passed a housing milestone as Dennis and Brewster both opted into the state's seasonal communities designation.
Seasonal communities is a new law, a series of tools enabled for communities like ours that have big fluctuations in our population, that have a real estate market that's really geared towards second homes, investment properties.
That's State Senator Julian Sear. He said that with these latest opt-ins, the majority of the region can now work within the seasonal communities housing framework.
And now with Brewster and Dennis joining seasonal communities, a majority of towns on Cape Cod have taken the seasonal communities designation, as have all the towns in Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket.
The program is part of the state's wide-reaching Affordable Homes Act. It gives communities facing the unique challenges of a resort housing market more tools to support year-round housing. But to take advantage of these tools, each community must opt in through a town meeting vote.
So seasonal communities is probably the biggest thing the legislative delegation and the state had worked to deliver for Cape Cod and the islands since the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund was established, was written into law in 2018. So seasonal communities really is an amalgamation of a number of home rule petitions that various towns sent to the legislature, asking to, the ability to have a year-round housing trust, the ability to provide housing to municipal workers without running afoul of federal fair housing law, the ability to have year-round deed restrictions, right? These are all home rules that vineyard towns, Nantucket, Provincetown, Truro, Chatham had sent the legislature. And what seasonal communities essentially says is like, hey, look, you can do this without having to go through the home rule process. We recognize the headwinds that you face, and here are these tools.
To date, Brewster, Chatham, Dennis, Eastham, Falmouth, Orleans, Provincetown, Truro, and Wellfleet have all opted in. 6, mostly Upper Cape towns, have yet to make a decision. Those include Barnstable, Bourne, Harwich, Mashpee, Sandwich, and Yarmouth.
I do expect and I do hope that the Seasonal Communities Toolkit will be something, this designation will be something that, in the future, most all Cape towns will end up adopting. The state of the housing crisis is different across the region. So median home price on Nantucket is north of 3.5 million. And then when you come onto Cape Cod, right, the median home price in Provincetown and Chatham is sort of much higher than say in a Sandwich or a Bourne. So this is really a toolkit that's designed for communities to adopt, when they need it. So one piece that's really key and has gotten lost, I think, in a bit of the conversation is that without seasonal communities in this designation, the only tools that our towns have to address housing, we really only have 2. One is LIHTC, the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, right? This is a state and federal tax credit program that really works best with pretty large scale multifamily housing development. And then the second tool is 40B, Chapter 40B, which, people have a lot of sort of opinions about. This is a 50 plus year law, but basically 40B says, you can push the envelope on local regulations if you have a certain percentage that are set aside for affordable housing.
The Cape and Islands have a lot of company and resort towns across the country. In each of these places, the economic connection between wages and housing costs has long been disconnected, and communities have been testing and trialing a variety of approaches, many of which also appear in the Massachusetts legislation.
We really do have a broken market here, at least when it comes to year-round buyers. Seasonal communities recognizes that there's a gap between, traditional affordable housing, and then what folks can afford in the open market. Other communities like ours that are destinations that have this resort, luxury real estate market, they've put forward, tools, places like the Colorado ski towns, some of the towns around, Lake Tahoe, California, now also the Hamptons in New York, right on Long Island, and really seasonal communities is replicating tools like year-round deed restrictions, the ability to subsidize so-called attainable housing, workforce housing. These are all tools that those places have been using for quite some time. Seasonal communities basically realizes those tools here in Massachusetts. We've built the policy framework, but now we actually have to make real what seasonal communities enables. So that's why we're all in.